Welcome, everyone. My name is Emily Robles, and I'm an academic operations manager here at UAGC. I will be the host of this session, Yes, and How a Foundation in the Humanities Fuels the Future. By joining us today, you acknowledge that the session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. James Meetze from our UAGC family.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out on the last day at lunchtime of the TLC. I'm Dr. James Meetze. I'm really happy to be here talking about the humanities, which, sometimes gets not the best rap, but I'd like to give it a better one. So to begin, I'd like to start with a poll for those of you who are in attendance. How many of you majored in a field within the humanities? Yes or no? I was going to say, wow, 100%. That's great. I'm preaching to the choir. Okay, and then we'll go to question number 2. How many of you majored in a field associated with STEM? Let's see. Oh, I guess do we share results? Did we get question number 2? And how many of you who majored in a field associated with STEM first got a broad foundation in the humanities, among the other liberal arts, before entering your degree program? There we go. Okay, we've got a well-rounded group here. That's great. All right, well, as you can tell from the title of my talk, Yes, and How a Foundation in the Humanities Fuels the Future, I am a bit biased toward a foundation in the humanities. I hope that doesn't upset any of my STEMmies here. You know where the majority of the attention goes already anyway. So I begin by announcing my bias. I've been teaching in the humanities in higher education at both undergraduate and graduate levels for going on 2 decades. Over the years, my students have gone on to become lawyers, professors, tech entrepreneurs, UX designers for companies formerly known as Facebook, a few of them, neuroscientists, small business owners, social workers, therapists, doctors, researchers, among a vast array of other professions. This is just a smattering of real-world careers to which current students might find themselves called. Real-world careers in which students whose university education is built on access to a foundation in the humanities will have the applicable skills to become the problem solvers of tomorrow. It is in the humanities that students develop the ability to make connections between complex and abstract ideas, to understand and empathize with alternative points of view, to think critically and self-reflectively, and to foster their own creativity, all of which enable a more nimble, nuanced, solution-centered approach to a world that is ever more rapidly in flux. Furthermore, through open access to a foundation in the humanities, we empower a larger and more diverse student population with the skills necessary to meet the challenges of the future and further fuel humanity's place in it. The world, as we know, has changed. We accept this change and recognize the breakneck pace at which it persists, or we are left behind. The educational paradigms of the past century and more no longer necessarily serve us in the present we live in, and we need to reframe what purpose education serves. We remember the now cliche anecdote that Steve Jobs, that guy, felt compelled to audit a calligraphy course, which instilled in him a sense of the importance of beauty and utility, form and function. He built this into his Apple computers. Today, Apple Inc. is the most valuable corporation in the world. But we tell this story about Steve Jobs because it is now mythologized and because it gives us permission to follow our passions, our whims, our creativity, and see what we learn and what may come of it. So I want to focus on this word, creativity, defined as the state or quality of being creative, the ability to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, relationships, or the like, and to create meaningful new ideas, forms, methods, interpretations, etc. Or 3, the process by which one utilizes creative ability. I like to focus on all of these together, but in specifically number 2. Now, creativity as such isn't the end goal of higher education. Rather, it is to prepare students through the acquisition of broad-based knowledge and a specialization in a particular field to become thoughtful, informed participants in and contributors to society. But does society tomorrow look different than today? Will society have changed by the time a student graduates? Is society the same when a person enters the workforce and when they reach whatever we might call mid-career? Is it more common now that millennials, for instance, change jobs every 3 years? The answer is yes to all of these. Or the answer is yes, and. We can't exactly predict what society will look like this time next year, much less 3 or 5 or 10 years down the line. So if we are to believe the popular maxim attributed to Heraclitus that the only constant is change, which is a sort of simplification of what he actually said, and apply it to education, to the workplace, to the very fabric of society, then it behooves us to reflect on the importance of our creativity and the importance of those courses of study that most directly foster it, so that our students are better able to approach the unknown. A decade ago, Alphabet, better known as Google, which is currently ranked as the 4th most valuable company in the world, performed an internal study to identify the characteristics of their highest performing employees. Contrary to popular discourse and the ever more common focus on job-specific competencies rather than a basis in the liberal arts, the fundamental basis of education that has served humanities since classical antiquity, the study revealed that the 7 top characteristics of success at Google are all soft skills: being a good coach, communicating and listening well, possessing insights into others, including others' different values and points of view, having empathy toward and being supportive of one's colleagues, being a good critical thinker and problem solver, and being able to make connections across complex ideas. This is not a unique finding. Rather, it is something that business leaders in all sectors have long known. The qualities of the most high-achieving people are directly connected to the skills developed through the study of writing, literature, philosophy, and the arts. In her book, The New Education, How to Revolutionize the University to Prepare Students for a World in Flux, Kathy Davidson argues that students today need these so-called soft skills, including strategies, methods, and tactics for successful communication and collaboration. These are necessary to navigate a world in flux, where they cannot count on continuing for any length of time in the job or even the field for which they were originally trained. Students need to learn, how to be adaptable, how to draw on and apply a broad base of knowledge to complex problems, knowing how to access knowledge. And these are the very same skills fostered by a foundation in the humanities. With this in mind, I want to point to what I'm doing here at the University of Arizona Global Campus in our little course, English 225, Introduction to Film. It's actually quite big. We serve a lot of students. That serves as a valuable model for how a basis in the humanities prepares students for their proactive roles in their future success. Now, I don't know how many of you have taught humanities courses in Gen Ed, but I've had a lot of students, and I mean a lot of students, ask me, why am I studying film if I'm majoring in X, Y, or Z? Now, I know the impetus for this question comes from a tectonic shift in the perception of the value of education toward specialization for specialization's sake, or for the most direct pathway between degree and job in that degree field. Education has become impatient. Thus, students have learned that follow these steps and be prepared for this job. What's missing in this equation, however, is curiosity, sustainability, critical thinking, breadth of knowledge, and creativity. What happens to this student when the only constant being change, their job in that degree field becomes obsolete, or is better and more efficiently done by our inevitable AI overlords? This student who followed the most direct pathway at the expense of curiosity, sustainability, critical thinking, breadth of knowledge, and creativity, now faces a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. On the other hand, the student who has developed these skills in exploring the humanities, the student who knows how to interpret and analyze a narrative, how to listen to diverse perspectives, how to identify themes and intentions, and how to adapt their communication style based on their audience, well, this student is more prepared for that necessary pivot. Why are you taking a film class? The answer is baked into our course description, which explains the outcomes and drives home what skills students should expect to take away. This course is designed to expand students' appreciation of film and knowledge of how films are made. Through analysis of storytelling in a visual medium, students will examine the ways in which movies are shot, develop characters, evoke emotion, depict physical reality, reflect society, and have the power to influence it. Though the focus of the course is film itself, students will gain deeper intercultural fluency while growing their skills in critical thinking, written communication, and visual analysis. In English 225, Introduction to Film, and along with my comrades and colleagues in our English sequence within the Gen Ed track as a whole, we are systematically equipping our students with a practice of inquiry, of self-reflection, of research across disciplines, of purposeful writing, and a perspective that is open to the many stories, the many points of view that comprise our society. Furthermore, we ask students to see themselves in these practices, to see their potential in these practices, to find meaning in their pursuits, and to thoughtfully add their unique voices to the larger conversation. All of this aimed also at fostering their development of those so-called soft skills that are the markers of the highest achievers at Google and elsewhere. One key similarity in each of our entry point English courses is that each begins with a self-reflection in the respective contexts of writing and identity, writing, research, and career, and writing, film, and society. When this kind of self-reflexive pedagogy is applied in an open access university, then it is reaching students in a more rhizomatic and exponential way. Read Gilles Deleuze and Guattari to get that rhizomatic defined. I'm trained primarily as a poet, so I'm rather fond of metaphor, particularly the metaphor I first heard from the former president of Stanford University and fellow appreciator of poetic devices, John Hennessy, who said, "I love this metaphor of T-shaped people, somebody with real depth and expertise in a field, but also the ability to relate to their fellow partners who they will need to work with in order to achieve that change in the world." In a Forbes article, "Are You an I or a T?" Andy Boynton describes the I-shaped professional as highly versed in a specific area of expertise, who learns by drilling more deeply into a particular field. The T-shaped person has broader skills and knowledge and learns by linking up different perspectives from different specialties. This T-shaped person has a broad foundation and a central focus on a specific area of expertise. What is important here is how that horizontal line on the T, signifying that broad base in the liberal arts, in the humanities, influences both curiosity and problem solving along the deep dive into that central focus. Both types, Boynton continues, are essential in any organization. Many leaders today, however, feel that T people are better at fostering the diverse connection and conversations that bring exceptional ideas to the surface. And these leaders bemoan what they see as a dearth of them in today's hyper-specialized environments. Thus, far from the changing world ushering us away from the humanities, it calls on us as educators to better prepare our students for this future in flux that is also our present, to foster in our students a curiosity across a broad range of subjects beyond just the field of their major, and to make that curiosity relevant, to make that curiosity actionable by drawing these connections between soft skills and the ability to succeed in uncertain times. When Ta-Nehisi Coates, author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Between the World and Me, writes to his teenage son, "For all of your life, whenever you've had a question, you've been able to type that question out on a keyboard, and within seconds, revel in the flood of potential answers." He's also speaking to our students. When he reflects on his own experience, not entirely different from mine, although quite different, on using microfiche and call slips in a physical library, we remember those, some of us, that may or may not ever answer the questions to begin with, writing, "For a young man like me, the invention of the internet was the invention of space travel." He is also speaking to our students. We serve students native to both experiences, digital and analog, using the same internet-based platform and, generally speaking, expect the same facility with space travel. Likewise, we are bombarded with answers and narratives and images and targeted content, each with its stylized, packaged, massaged messaging. In this world far beyond anything Marshall McLuhan might have envisioned, studying the humanities and the multiple sensory and analytical processes it nurtures will best prepare our students to parse, analyze, synthesize, adapt, and respond to the same kind of fast-moving information we encounter on a daily basis. As our students reach the end of English 225, Introduction to Film, they are asked in their final discussion to describe what can be gained through analyzing film, to explain how this course has changed how they view movies, to connect the ways in which movies are related to and can impact society, to describe how live learning expanded their appreciation of the skills they have developed regarding both film analysis and beyond, and to assess the top 2 skills they have developed during the course and how those skills might be added to their resume, to their LinkedIn profile to benefit their future career or current profession. This course, and by extension, courses in the humanities, are fostering the metacognition that is inherently absent from an overtly prescriptive focus on job-specific competencies, such that instead of asking, why am I studying film, students are asking, how does studying film expand my thinking? How does studying film broaden my ability to draw connections between diverse perspectives? How does studying film help me better understand my fellow person? What we think of as soft skills are really human skills. And as we persist in this ever-evolving world, it is these human skills that open the doors to our greatest potential. It is the humanities, after all, long recognized as the noble arts, that comprise the very foundations of our culture, through which, when we learn them, we become most humanized and most able to see the humanity in another. So, thank you for listening to me talk. I'd love to open it up to some questions and see what we have in the chat. If are people able to turn on their microphones? If they are, we could foster some questions, field some questions. Right, Becky? So many nickels to print out articles from the microfiche.
Dr. Meetze, there is a question in the Hoover app. It says, what role do the humanities play in fostering empathy and understanding among diverse communities? And how does this promote a more inclusive future?
That's an excellent question. Last year, I actually presented on that topic in relation to how we use the diversity, equity, and inclusion rubric to facilitate the redevelopment of this English 225 course. But it's the way that we appreciate and spend time with other people's stories, with stories that are other than our own, and learn to see those stories as just as valid as our own, that I think really amplifies that capacity for empathy toward our fellow person. We're able to see the experiences that we might not have the opportunity to experience, and feel for the people that experience those things. We, can see how those experiences affect somebody if we're studying film, if the actors are good at conveying emotion, or in a book, right? If the writer is good at conveying those points. I think this is, if we look at art, sometimes we see ourselves excluded. And that creates a different kind of conversation, different kind of tension. I hope that starts to answer it. That's a whole nother presentation I can give answering that question.
Hold on, we might have another one, a whole nother presentation. It is, how does exposure to the humanities help people adapt and thrive in rapidly changing world? And how does this adaptability prepare them for future challenges?
I think because it opens people to seeing different possibilities, to a broad range. I'm talking about the humanities. This is not just one field. I'm using one class sort of as an example. But this is giving somebody a foundation in culture, human culture across history, right? And seeing how culture has changed, seeing all the different factors that have shaped culture, that have stopped culture, that have pushed culture forward, that have created tension and resolution. Seeing these things make people feel, I think, more at home in a world that is always changing. And it's really those skills of communication, of being able to write and adapt your style and adapt your thinking, and being able to hear different perspectives and creativity, right? To think of creative solutions to problems that we might not have an immediate answer to. I don't see a job for myself. Well, what do I love doing? How can I turn that into a career? These are creative questions that serve creative answers.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, yes.
This is Amy Erickson, and I love to use the example. I don't know if you've read any of Ursula Hedges' books, but she has this amazing book, Stones by the River, and it's all about World War II in Germany. And you are put right in the main character is Trudy. And it isn't until you get pretty deep into the novel that you all of a sudden realize that she does not fit the Nazi stereotype of what was, the sort of people to be saved and to propagate the German race. And you're so invested in this character. And it also just gives you such a better understanding that when we talk about using literature to create empathy, you get so connected with this character and the fear that surrounded so many Germans during this time. You can often hear people saying things like, well, why didn't the Germans do anything? They couldn't do anything. And that becomes so clear in this book, the fear of their neighbors being turned in by each other, the fear of risking their lives to save people, and how many people did that. It's really hard to I just feel like literature is such a fabulous way to teach empathy because of that. You get put into that protagonist's shoes, and you are all of a sudden living their life and seeing your life through an entirely different lens, and seeing history through an entirely different lens as well. So I've really enjoyed your presentation. I want to thank you so much for it, and I'll mute now and let you respond.
Thank you so much for that. I'm actually not familiar with that work, but I will absolutely seek it out. But I think you make a great point in that literature, film, puts us in the place of needing to empathize with a character, right? Whether or not we agree with that character. Literature and film love anti-heroes. We love to see people faced with complex decisions, with complex choices. And we love to see them make mistakes because we make mistakes. We get to see ourselves reflected in someone else's mistake without actually having to make it. And I think these kind of stories enable us to see the nuances and the gray area that is humanity, that is history, that is life, right? There are a lot of things that are black and white, right and wrong, absolutely. But I think the majority of human experience lives in that gray area, and having these perspectives helps us navigate it.
Thank you, Dr. Meetze. I think we have time for one more question.
Is it okay if I ask one?
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Hey, hi, James. This is Teresa. So earlier today, I had the good fortune to host a presentation of a couple of your colleagues in SGS, Clifford and Chris. So they were talking about their collaboration in Science 207, and a topic that came up was how they tried to give students a right-brained experience and a left-brained class, which seems to connect so well to what you're talking about in here. So I just wondered if you could comment on your observation of how this, I mean, I'm really making a broad statement here by saying that the humanities are typically perceived as a right-brained field.
Right.
But yeah, what are your observations about the impact of humanities type of like thinking, that right-brain thinking, on the more, hard sciences or those other types of activities?
I love Clifford and Chris, even though they're scientists and philosophers. But really, I think it's that ability to be creative and to think creatively, right? If you have that creative ability, and I'm not saying one should only study the humanities, I'm just saying that this is important to whatever you study because it helps you see your field through a creative lens and be more flexible in what you do with it. And I think I know what they're doing is outstanding, and giving the right-brained experience in a left-brained class is something I wish I could take, or wish I had taken when I was a student. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate your time and your ears.
Thank you, Dr. Meetze, and thank you to the audience for your participation in today's session. If you could please use the survey linked in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and share your feedback on your conference experience. I will drop the link in the chat. Also, we hope that you're enjoying the TLC conference and continue to listen to the remaining sessions on this final day.